Angry director gets her comeuppance in 4 gradual actions, posted by FML at SML. Several years ago, I used to work at an agency that hired us out as short-term temporary workers and contractors. These jobs pretty much consisted of stuff that company employees couldn't be bothered to do, and so they got someone in to sort it out. It wasn't great, but I had to make ends meet. Anyway, one of these jobs was for 150 hours at 5 weeks of office administration. There wasn't much more information to go on, but a job's a job. The office turned out to be quite a small, stuffy little building at the back of an industrial estate. I was told to report to Beryl. When I turned up, I was met by a rather grumpy-looking old lady having a cigarette by the front door. This was Beryl. Beryl didn't even say hello or ask me my name, but showed me in, pointed at an enormous pile of boxes full of paperwork, saying, "This all needs to be scanned in. There are 2 scanners connected to a computer there. Off you go. Let someone know if you need some help though, okay?" So off I went. That pile of boxes was to be my job for the next month and a bit. Joy. The office was predominantly young men, with Beryl being the only other woman. She was in her 50s and spent more time smoking than working, and, without being rude, clearly didn't look after herself. It was quite flattering to have a bunch of these guys pop by my workstation for a chat occasionally. After a few days of scanning, Beryl visited my cubicle. She wasn't happy that I spent too much time talking and not enough time working. I was confused. While I didn't have any metrics or targets, I was pretty consistently working through this mountain of paperwork. I got the impression that Beryl didn't like the attention that I was getting. I pointed out to her that I haven't left my desk apart from to go to the toilet. If someone's over here to talk to me, then that's fine, as I can talk and scan at the same time. Well, like I'm doing right now. She wasn't happy and turned away, calling out, "Just do your job," as she left. Some of the other guys had heard this, and they popped by my desk later and said not to worry. They'd had agency staff before, and Beryl always hated it if a young woman arrived because she was grumpy and jealous. Not my words. In fact, a few years ago, one young woman had left the office in tears because Beryl had tore her new one for going to lunch with some of the other guys. Naturally, this annoyed me, particularly because Beryl thought she could bully and disrespect agency staff, and I certainly wasn't going to leave this job because of an angry witch. Malicious compliance number 1. For the rest of my time there, I made sure to get dressed up, makeup and curls, a mini office dress, stiletto heels, and when Beryl saw me clicking my way down the office the next day, fully dressed up just to scan some paperwork, she scowled at me, but she didn't say anything. The next week, Beryl took some time out of her busy smoking schedule to visit me in my cubicle, the second time she'd done so since I'd started. Some of the paperwork I was scanning in had been stapled together, so I had asked someone in the office for a staple remover and a stapler. I used to pull out the staple, scan the document, rename it on the computer, and then restaple it and put it back in the box. I was just pulling a staple out when Beryl walked by. Beryl's first words to me were, "What are you doing?" I replied that this document was stapled, and if I put it in the machine, well, it'd jam. She raised her voice slightly and said, "Nobody told you to do that. Just scan each page in separately. Leave the papers alone." I could almost hear her eye roll as she walked away. Malicious compliance number 2. So, I did. I scanned everything with staples just folded over and then created folders called Document 123, and each scan went in as 123-page1.pdf, 123-page2.pdf. You get the idea. This slowed me down a lot, but hey, it was what I was asked to do. At some point, Beryl walked by and saw me flipping pages like that. I'd put my hair in a bun and taken my heels off, and she smirked. She thought she'd flustered me and that I didn't see her reaction. Don't worry, Beryl, you didn't, and I did. The paperwork I was scanning in was boxed up as newest first, so as I got to some of the older papers, these had been moved around, a couple of times, and they were slightly scrunched up or folded or similar. A jammed scanner wasn't an issue. It had happened a handful of times before, but as I got to the older papers, the jams became more frequent. It was easy to sort though, just open the back door of the scanner, roll the paper out, cancel the job, and, just redo it. At this point, I'd gone back to unstapling and restapling because Beryl had given me some space, thinking that she'd broken me, and I just wanted to get the job done so I could leave. Beryl walked in one day. This would have been my 4th week there. She saw me unjamming the scanner and she flipped her top. She yelled, "SML, what are you doing?" At this point, all heads in the office turned to where we were. I calmly told her, "Well, the scanner's jammed. I'm just pulling the paper out so I can rescan it. It shouldn't take me more than just a few minutes." She continued yelling, "At no point were you instructed to perform IT repairs. We have someone for that. Just stop what you're doing and get someone to help you. I asked you this when you started. Why can't you follow simple instructions?" It took a lot of patience not to argue back with her, which I thought was what she wanted. But I just said, "Okay, fine. Can I speak to the IT guy just to sort this out?" I couldn't have choreographed her response better. I then knew that she did want me to argue so she could kick me out, because she hesitated and said, well, the IT guy is off for the rest of the week." This was on a Thursday. "Use the other scanner. If you jam it, let me know." And she just stormed off. Malicious compliance number 3. I knew her diary, and she was off the next day, which was Friday. I carried on with the one scanner, making sure it didn't jam that day, and waited until the next morning. Coincidentally, the scanner jammed on the first piece of paper that I fed into it. Who would have thought? She didn't answer her phone, and as she wasn't in the office, I spent the day and just sat around without much to do. While talking to the guys in the office, I learned that the company had been bought out by a much larger IT firm, and they just wanted the rights to the proprietary software that they developed. It also turned out that the CEO of the small company basically paid himself into retirement and appointed Beryl as the new director. Beryl knew that her days were numbered, so she was even more bitter to the staff. The guys working there had been committed to various levels of careers within the new IT firm, which they were happy with. As I was told, 120,000 employees, 30 dev roles are easy to find, one director role is not. Anyway, when we returned on Monday, you could almost see the vein in her neck throbbing. She'd wasted an entire day of whatever her company paid my agency because little old me wasn't trusted to fix a paper jam. I used to get in a little later than the rest of the staff, agency perks, woohoo! But when I got in, she'd had the IT champion perform the skilled job of opening a scanner and pulling a piece of paper out. She didn't even look at me when she said, "Scanners are fixed, get on with your job and don't mess around." At this point, you may be thinking, "Oh, SML, this is a lot of text for some pretty trivial malicious compliance." Well, you'll like the final part. My last week there coincided with a new contract that the company had been given by their new owners. I assume it was some sort of litmus test. While I don't pretend to understand what it was, the job involved a lot of scanning documents that had been handwritten. Hooray, more boxes! At the same time, a few of the guys who worked there were going on a visit to the new parent company, which were based in the USA, and I live in the UK. The IT champion was one of those guys who went. When the boxes were delivered to my cubicle, Beryl popped by and said, "These take priority. All of what I said to you is more important than ever. Do not mess around, otherwise you are out of the door. Am I clear?" "Yes, ma'am." The paperwork delivered was from the USA. Our paper sizes are different. The first piece of paper I fed into the scanner jammed it. A safety lock because it expected A4 and got US letter instead. I jammed both scanners. Beryl, not being one to turn down a free trip to America, had gone with them. I rang her at 11 a.m. UK time, which was 5 a.m. their time. She picked up and was not impressed. I felt sorry for the folks adjacent to her hotel room when she screamed down the phone, "You've done what? How? Why?" I tell her about the USA paperwork, and she shouts, "Can you not fix it?" Final malicious compliance. "No, you've told me many times that I can't fix these machines. What's the business continuity plan?" Now, as a side note, my brother told me that phrase, and he still doesn't quite understand why I turned up to his house a bit later with a few pizzas and a box of beer. Beryl had no idea what to do. She was clearly flustered. Can you just do what you can? We need this done. What would you want me to do? Can you fix the scanners, because this is really important? I'm sorry, you told me that I can't do that. I need simple instructions to work with. Just fix it. I'd be happy to show an IT specialist where the scanners are if you can get them here to She hung up on me. Well, that's that then. I spent the rest of my week chatting to my colleagues, updating my CV, and applying for jobs. Nobody turned up to fix the scanners. When my final week finished, I said bye to the guys I'd worked with. I wished them luck, and I left with none of the critical paperwork scanned in. When Beryl got back from her business trip, I learned that she'd spent one day at the parent company and left it to the other guys. When the crap hit the fan because nothing was being delivered, they wondered where she was. This was day 2 into the 5-day business trip. She was at a spa. Phone switched off. She flew out early on day 5 without seeing any of her colleagues or the parent company. I kept in touch with a few of the guys afterwards. After this, the dev guys were transferred contracts to the larger IT firm. They all got a very small salary increase, but were also able to work from home. This was pre-COVID, so it was a bit of a rarity back then. Beryl, meanwhile, Beryl didn't fare so well. She was initially offered redundancy, which is paid, including pension deals, but when someone complained that she'd not been present for the meetings, which I think was their IT champion, they found out that she'd been sightseeing and shopping and tanning and getting her hair done on company time. She ended up being fired. No bonus, no pension, nothing. I quit the agency not long afterwards, and after 1 or 2 moves, ended up in a job that I'm very happy with. The agency were none the wiser about any of this. They just wanted their money, and aside from one initial checkup call, they left me to it. I got back at them big time, posted by St. Harrop. I worked for 2 years at a tile store. I handled customers as well as worked in the warehouse. Not to brag, but for those 2 years, I worked the earliest shift that no one wanted, because you had to receive the daily truck and put the tile orders away by hand at 6 in the morning. But I also said that I would work every Saturday as well. Now, I didn't do this because I hated myself and wanted to suffer. It was because I wanted the outside sales job. The outside salesman that got the job entered right after I started, and we hit it off quickly. We will call him Joe. Joe confided in me that he had no plans to continue this job after about a year or so. So from the get-go, I said I wanted that job, and I worked my butt off to get it. Pulling shifts no one wanted, doing jobs no one would do, and doing things that were definitely not part of my job description. This included doing a lot of the outside sales job. I would take over when Joe would call out or just needed help. He came to rely on me and gave me part of his job. I saw this as a type of internship and thought it would pay off. Fast forward 2 years. Joe tells me that he is about to put his 2 weeks in and to get my resume together. He puts in his 2 weeks notice, and I immediately put my application in. I got the backing from both Joe and the branch manager to get the job and did a pretty good job on the interview. I knew that I was pretty much a shoo-in for the job. I had seniority and it never caused a problem in my time there. I had a very good relationship with the contractors that I sold to, and I knew all of them by name. The main part of the outside sales job was working with the contractors, so I felt confident, to say the least, that I had what the company was looking for. 2 other employees applied as well. An ex-convict who had anger problems that will come up later. We'll call him Bob, and a recently hired woman who had no experience in tile. We'll call her Anne. The only other job she had ever done was as a secretary, and she was currently just helping customers with selections. Both of them were older than me. I was in my early 20s and both of them in the 30s. A couple of days after that, I got a call from HR telling me I didn't get the job. Instead, they wanted to give it to Anne. I won't lie, I thought I misheard or that it was a prank at first. The only reason HR would give me as to why they passed me up for the position was, "You're just too good of a worker and valuable at your position for us to lose you. You do such a good job and are so responsible. We would hate to lose that." So, because I'm good at my job, you won't hire me for another one with more responsibilities? Yep, but to show how much we appreciate you, we're giving you a $1 raise. Do I still get my yearly dollar raise on top of this in a couple months? Well, no. Think of this as we are giving it to you 2 months early. I was fuming for a couple of days. Their excuse didn't make sense, and I had a feeling that I was being discriminated against due to my age. However, I was set upon making a point that they chose the wrong person that came up with a plan. Because I was so good at my job, I didn't get the outside sales job. So if I was bad at my job, maybe they would promote me then. Let me rephrase. I wasn't bad at my job, but I told my manager that I no longer would work the morning shift, would no longer be there on Saturdays, would no longer do the worst jobs, and would no longer be doing any jobs that fell outside of my description, including the outside sales job that I had been helping with. Anne goes out for a couple of weeks for training and personal time, during which things are already starting to fall apart. My manager asked me to fill in for Anne just while she's away. He understands why I'm doing what I am, but asked as a personal favor. I agree, and things begin to get back to where they were before. Anne comes back, and I resume my firm stand. Anytime something was supposed to be done by the outside sales position that I normally did, I would send it her way. Customers, problems, heavy to lift things, and other favors that I used to do for Joe, I refused to do for her. It gave me a little relief to see her running everywhere trying to get everything done. She only asked me once to help her, to which I just told her that it wasn't my job. Those first couple of weeks, things were a little rough as most of the jobs were left over from when Joe and I were running things. So most of the problems came from the daily grind. But the weeks that followed were chaotic to say the least. Items came in late, jobs were missing or unordered, contractors didn't understand where their materials were. Mind you, these guys get paid per job. So every day their material isn't there is another day they don't work or get paid. So, when their materials don't come in, their workers who are paid hourly are getting paid for no reason at all. My favorite one is when she accidentally sent an order across the country, costing the company thousands as we lost money on that job. As things were starting to turn into the dumpster fire I knew it would, HR called me in to talk about my attitude. "We have heard your attitude as of late. It doesn't sound like you are being a team player." "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Have I said something hurtful to someone?" "No." Maybe did I hurt somebody's feelings unintentionally?" "No." "Oh, okay, so I just don't understand what attitude you're talking about then." "We have received word that you aren't being as helpful as you were to Joe as you are now to Anne." "Well, you see, I am far too valuable at my current job. I can't possibly detract away from that." They immediately saw that they had made a mistake in giving me that reason as to why they didn't hire me. They then told me that I needed to be more of a team player and would pay me an additional $1 an hour when the yearly raise came around in 2 months. I told them that it wasn't my job to do what they were asking, and if they wanted me to do that, that they would have to negotiate my contract. They told me that they would need to discuss it and to reconsider being a team player. I did not relent, and they weren't interested in renegotiating my contract. Well, 2 months after Ann got the job and things went to heck, she stepped down. Again, I put my resume in, as did Bob. Now, remember how I said that he had a slight anger issue? Well, that came to a head just before Ann put her 2-week notice in. Bob threatened a contractor. The contractor was a real piece of work, but that doesn't excuse the fact that Bob threatened the guy. Regardless, with this now happening and Ann putting in her 2 weeks, I couldn't see how they couldn't hire me. It was me or someone who threatened customers. I once again go through the process, but this time I play my cards close to my chest. They didn't know that after Ann was first chosen over me, I started to look for a new job. Just as this interview process was going on, a company called me back and offered me an outside sales job at their company. It was lower pay than my current company's, but they didn't need to know that. They also did not need to know that I accepted the position and told them I needed to finish my 2 weeks. I wasn't going to give them my 2 weeks though. I was going to make it look like it was a competition and try to string it for those 2 weeks. The company offered me the outside sales job and nearly begged me to take it. They apologized for making the bad decision of picking Ann over me and told me that they would love to have me in the position. Now, let the fun begin. I promptly told them that I would need to think about this as their competitor had just offered me that same job for a higher pay. The look on their faces was to die for. I pretended that it was a back and forth for 2 weeks, which conveniently went over Ann's quitting date and my new job's starting date. They got anxious because they now didn't have anyone for the job and finally gave me a final offer. I promptly shot them down and told them that I didn't want to work for a company that treats their hardworking employees like crap. They can sleep in the bed they've made. And then I told them that I was starting the next day at the other company. I have never been so happy. I destroyed my boss, Karen. She'll regret messing with me after this. Click the video on your screen, you don't want to miss this one, and I will see you there.